right. So is that trade the greatest trade in Houston sports history? Big three, pro teams.
So I think the way you start this conversation is you also have to identify who are the candidates. I mean, I think that it's up there. I think that because of the haul you got, because of where this team is, because of how quick the turnaround happened after you thought you had your franchise quarterback and you got another one and you got to the playoffs and you won a playoff game, you did all these things. But you got to believe the Jordan trade and the Bagwell trade are way up there in this city in terms of trades that will live in infamy in terms of what the Astros got and what the other team, how the other team got fleeced. I'm trying to think if we missed anything. The Barkley trade wasn't big enough. The Dwight Howard trade, probably not big enough. I don't think any of the other Rockets moves were big enough.
No. The biggest Rockets trade was probably yeah, that's probably up there.
Because it got the second championship.
Yeah, I would put the Clyde trade up there. I think the Harden trade's up there. Like even if you don't like Harden, Harden's the second best Rocket ever.
It's in the conversation. I know a lot of people had the conversation that he was the greatest Rocket ever, and that's when they had to slow their roll. But he's definitely in the conversation for the amount of time that he did what he did here. Yeah.
So I would say the Harden trade and the Drexler trade would be my finalists from the Rockets.
Okay.
Texans. I mean, I don't think there's a greater trade in Texans history than Deshaun Watson.
No.
They've made some big trades. They traded up for Will Anderson. They didn't trade up for Deshaun. They already had pick 12. Right?
No.
They did trade up.
No, they traded.
That's right. They did trade up for that.
They traded up. Yep.
But then you traded him because, all of the stuff, the way he demanded a trade. So I guess you would put those two on the short list for the Texans. Either Watson trade, maybe even the Anderson trade would be under consideration. Certainly not equal to that, but under consideration. I think the Astros have a ton.
Yeah.
The Astros have the Jordan trade, which got you, a title. Jordan's won one title. The Bagwell trade because you got a Hall of Famer. I mean, you got a Hall of Famer out of that deal. And then the Justin Verlander trade.
Yep.
I mean, the Verlander trade, you got 2 World Series titles out of that one. So it's hard for me to have Deshaun ahead of the trades the Astros have made. Like, I wouldn't be ahead of the Jordan trade because, Jordan's a stud and he got his World Series title. It wouldn't be ahead of the Verlander trade because it got you your first ever World Series title. And then Bagwell got you a Hall of Famer.
Well, Drexler got you a title, too.
Yeah, he's wasn't the best player on that team.
No, but without him, I don't think you win the championship.
They literally won a championship the year before without him.
Right, but then they were really bad the next year and floundering before they made the trade.
It's hard for me to put Drexler in that conversation.
Okay, I'm putting him in the conversation
with Verlander and Jordan.
Yeah, because they got a championship, and I think it was directly associated with that move. Like the Verlander trade, I think they, as good as they were, that's the move that got them over the top. So I'm totally putting that in the conversation. I omitted that early on.
Yeah, I wouldn't have Drexler up there with Jordan, Verlander. Like, if you give me a title, and I know Drexler did, if you give me a title and then a Hall of Fame career, like the Bagwell, like that's way up there. So, like, whenever we look at the Deshaun trade, we look at, like, I understand have you thanked to Brown lately? I don't think that they have that yet. Like, they don't have a title. They don't have, even an all-pro yet from the Deshaun trade. Like, the greatest part of it, I'm sure you got a lot of starters, but, like, almost the greatest part about the Deshaun trade is that you no longer have Deshaun.
It really is right now. But I think the other thing is, like, you and I are both on the same page of the fact that we're not going to analyze the trade overnight. You have to let it kind of ferment, and you have to let it all kind of come into place over time to see how did the trade work out. Now, if the subsequently down the road the Texans win a title and the guys that they got in totality for Deshaun Watson helped lead them to a title, or they played a role in it or a big role in it, then I think you can always evaluate the trade and say not only was it addition by subtraction, but if it led to a title and the 9 guys or whatever it was that you got out of the deal or used to get players that got you to that point, now you can evaluate.
See, this trade, it kind of gets, messed up a little bit because Nick Casario is a Will and Dillon son of a gun, and he traded a lot of these picks.
He did.
So, like, you kind of have to, look at all of the branches of this. It's basically amounted to Kenyon Green, John Mechie, Christian Harris, Thomas Booker, Damian Pierce, Will Anderson, Kalen Bullock, Tank Dell, Kamari Lassiter, Jamal Hill, Kate Stover. So, like, yeah, that's a great trade. Yeah, you much rather have all of that stuff than Deshaun Watson for a variety of different reasons. Off the field, on the field, he's been pretty poor. You have C.J. Stroud now, so you have no issue with the fact that Deshaun Watson's no longer here. If he was here and he was playing like he's playing now, you'd be looking to get a new quarterback anyways. I think for this Deshaun Watson trade to be the greatest in Houston sports history, though, I think they're going to need to win a title, and I think one of these guys has to turn into like an All-Pro.
Or is it safe to say? I was going to say, is one of them going to turn into a Hall of Famer?
I don't think they have to turn into a Hall of Famer because you have your Super Bowl. Like if you don't get your Super Bowl though, it can't be the greatest trade in Houston sports history.
Agreed.
If you don't get a Super Bowl, it can't be better than the Jordan trade. It can't be better than the Verlander trade. I wouldn't say it's better than the Bagwell trade because Bagwell trade you got a Hall of Famer. If you want to throw the Drexler trade in there, okay, like I'm willing to listen to that as well. But to pass all of those, I think you need at minimum a Super Bowl and an All-Pro.
Yeah, and I think the other misconception that everybody has out there is that the Deshaun trade got you CJ, and it didn't. It got you Anderson.
Yeah.
So I think that's something that's got to be cleared up as well because, and regardless, either way, and how definitive their careers are, the first step is I got to end up with a title out of all this. So I think that's the first step for this trade and for this team. And then from there, are you going to have a guy? Because Will Anderson's going to be a guy that's probably, you hope, is the trajectory says he's going to be one of the best pass rushers in the league for quite a while. So that's where you would probably start as if you said the centerpiece of all those guys.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't think Kenyon Green, I don't think he's on that level.
No.
I don't think the other guys, we don't know, but I don't think Bullock's going to be on that level. I think they're going to be good players, but I don't think they're going to be on that level. I think Will Anderson's the guy that carries the torch there.